G'day everyone. I'm just throwing this as an intro to all of these videos I'm about to upload. These are all spearfishing info videos from Patreon. The Patreon people that I spoke with said they wouldn't mind if these eventually went on YouTube. There's about 9 hours of spearfishing info stuff. Nothing fancy, just me talking to a GoPro on various topics, but it will probably help quite a few new divers because there's like 9 hours of just absolute... I cover everything I've sort of ever learned in the scene. With regards to me spearfishing, probably not a reality at the moment. I was just diagnosed with a disorder called ME a few years back. Stupidly tried to hide it. Shouldn't have actually, because if I come out with these things I can help other people that are struggling through them. But yeah, I haven't even been able to make this video for the last 4 days because I've been and now yeah, I've got enough energy today. But yeah, you can watch the Future of Aquatic Rehab spearfishing video if you want to know more on that. For anyone that wants to help me through this, I will put my PayPal in here. Feel free if you think you're getting value out of this, because sort of everything helps with this. But otherwise, no pressure. Just go out and send us pictures of the fish that you're smashing. And yeah, hope you guys get some info. G'day crew. This video is just another two-parter. I'm just firstly going to show you guys a pole spear that I use for snapper, but also kingfish. It's kingfish worthy, so you could get ideas on what to use if you wanted a pole spear kingfish. And it's not that difficult, because if you don't have something extended right out in front of you, your pole spear is right back in here. The kingfish can come quite a lot closer. They don't sort of keep the distance out past that big pointy thing you've got. And then I had a question come through on the phone with regards to sharks. So firstly I'll do the pole spear thing, and then I'll have a look at that question. So this is my rig here. So this is a 10-foot Rife carbon pole spear. Now there's quite a few good brands in the market. I've been out of touch with a bit, but there's Rife, and then there's Gatku, and I think Headhunter as well. And they do like a I think a few of them now are actually doing like roller pole spears too. You'd have to look into that. That's something a bit new for me. But first I'll show you how I attach it. So there's my float line. With this here, I've got quite a lot of line on there. I haven't even really bothered having a float on it, because where I'm shooting kingies isn't even really that deep. But basically what I do is I have my float line attached by tying it around this point instead of attaching it with a shark clip, because when I load it, you can imagine if I hold it in my hand and load it, a shark clip can be quite, firstly it has to be a big shark clip to grip onto there, and also it can be quite annoying in your hand because it's this big sort of metal thing, and you know, you're loading this right the way up. So that's just an initial thing I thought I'd point out at the start. And then so what that does is that when you shoot a fish with it, you've essentially got a bungee there to take pressure off the line off the fish, because this is a slip tip, so the fish is stuck to the pole spear, and then I'm fighting it holding this line, and there's a big stretchy bungee, so it does give a bit of relief there. So what I'll do is I'll just put it together and show you the length. So it's a 10-footer, but what I'd recommend personally, so at this point in time, I think I'd probably actually prefer an 8-footer, because this is really, really long. So hopefully you guys can see this. So that would mean that this central section, because I think that's, yeah, I think this central section is 4 foot. But ideally I'd want that at 2 foot, and then bring this down to an 8 foot, whatever that math is. Because it's just so long that when I'm holding in the water, just getting all the way down to grab that rubber is actually quite a pain in the ass. And I'm sure with an 8-footer you'd still have the you know, you still have the grunt to get through your kingies and stuff. So this one just comes in 3 parts. And you can have a breakaway. I actually did originally have it breakaway, but that was just so complicated. So what I did was set up a slip tip, and I'll show you that in a second. So yeah, that's the length of it there. So and then for me to get down here, and then, you know, I'm coming right the way up like this. If I was at 8 foot, it would be sort of a shorter, tighter rubber, and I'd be holding it more down here. At 10 foot, yeah, she's a bit of a beast, but it does absolutely smash through them. So, yeah. And you can see what I mean with the, that's a lot easier on the hand there. So, I'll take this off just to show you guys the setup at the top here, because this is quite interesting. So what I did when I converted it over from a breakaway to a slip tip that actually holds the holds it on by a ring. So what you've got, I should bring it to the shade in case there's a bit of glare out there. So essentially there's a ring, sliding ring, and then these little sort of nubs there that prevent that ring from coming off, and then that's my slippy. So you can go through a nice big fish with that, whatever you want, and the slip tip will pop off, and that's the fish fighting stuck to the Polespear. And then obviously it's got that bungee that I was telling you about, so that sort of creates a bit of relief. With a big 10 foot or 2, I get paranoid kingfish taking it down under ledges and stuff and snapping it, but I've only shot a few fish with it. I didn't have it for quite a while because it was at my mate's house, but I just got it back and I wanted to get into shooting fish again with it. I had some perishing on that rubber, and I just realised yesterday, so I cut the perish part off and retied it, and then I realised if that rubber's still sort of weakened because it's been sitting around for so long, then it might snap on me while I'm fighting a fish and I lose the whole Polespear. So I may need a new rubber for it, but yeah. Anyway, so the slip tip sits on like that, and then you got this ring here that with this bit of string, so like your standard kind of slippies, and then you have this bit of rubber here, the rubber ring, and then this string goes through, and then you pull it tight, and that's what holds the tension to keep your slip tip from falling off in the water. Now, one thing I found is that when you shoot through fish, it injects so far in and through them that what it does is it either pulls this rubber bit all the way down through the handle, or I've had it where it goes right through kingfish, and then when the fish comes back and starts fighting on the slip tip, the rubber gets pulled off with it and you've lost it forever. So what I do is carry, like, I don't know, I think I just got some cheap hair ties and stuff that I had in my knife pocket, and then what I do is just like double them over a few times so they're quite tight, and then I just use them in the water and just have them holding that down. But yeah, that's pretty much a fairly good an idea for anyone that wants to spearfish, you know, big fish, any size snapper and kingies, you know, with the Polespear setup. That's the sort of the gist of how I use it. I'm so out of touch with it, and as I said, there is roller ones these days. They look crazy. It's like there's a roller on the bottom of it, and then the rubber comes up the other side, so then when you shoot it must I don't know, leverage sort of power from that somehow. But yeah, that's something to look into too, but it's real cool. So when you load that up, you know, you're holding it here at the handle. That's how much is in front of you, as opposed to that big spear gun hanging out in front of you. And kingfish and that, they like to sort of get around that furthest point, but if they're coming up in school and you, quite often they're there and they're sort of coming a bit closer, and you know, you get through fish sort of, I don't know if you guys can see sort of where those shoes are there, or that wall, not the far wall, but this one here behind these spear guns, or let's just say the shoes, that's probably about, I'd say that's almost 2 yards off the top, and let that go like that, and you're just going to smash right the way through that fish. And it hurts them because it's so thick. It just, and when they go through here, it's just a huge crunch, and it just seems to really smash them. I couldn't tell you how thick that is. It's going to be, I don't know, a couple of centimeters, and you know, your average shaft's sort of 7 mils. So yeah, it just peels them out. So if you have any questions on Polespears, guys, just ask us. And then for a double up, because I'm doing another double up app, Brad asks, I've spent a lot of time watching bronzy behavior on various videos, and if you're in water close encounters, do you have any tips for dealing with them when you have a float line rather than a reel gun? So effectively you don't have much to jab them away with if they are getting really game once hooked up, i.e. if gunners let go and using a float line to pull up. So yeah, yesterday I went out and actually targeted kingfish with this Polespear, and I was on a really sharky spot, and we got the wrong tide, so we didn't have that many fish, and then I put the Polespear away and sold it for the gun, and then we started to get into quite a few fish later on. But I had that exact same thing, because I was going to be using my float line, and then you got nothing on you. And also I shot a kingfish later in the day, and I had I shot it quite deep, and it sort of sped out and took 15 meters of reel off me, and then by the time I got to the surface I lost sort of majority of my reel line, probably almost 35-40 meters of reel, and I just ditched the gun. And I knew that there were sharks around it. You got to sort of play it by what's going on, how the viz is, if the viz is nice and that, but you ultimately you want your buddy there as a guard, and he's going to know what the deal is. If you have faith in your buddy, then that eliminates that problem. If you're going out and you're spearfishing coastal and you're by yourself or something like that, and then you shoot a kingy and then sharks come in on it, I mean, that's just luck of the draw. Some spots obviously sharkier than others. The main problem is when you get sort of 3 or 4 sharks at a time, and then they get racked up. But that's not the common occurrence. The common occurrence is like that first kingy, some sharks come in and one may take it, and then it's like, oh, okay, you know, just you just lay off them after that. But when you've got a few guys shooting kingies, and that's when you get those real crazy circumstances. My advice would be to have your mate as a guard, obviously, and only taking turns shooting fish, and stay sort of, you know, within sort of 5 meters of each other, and then if a shark comes in, your buddy can kind of just be there and be a guard for second shooting, or for getting the sharks to fuck off essentially, or trying to, you know, front and show them that we're just as aggressive as they are. Because that's the thing too, I get really staunch with bronzies. With sharks, I feel when they're getting racked up towards me, I feel like an equal amount of anger, and so I get really, it's not like I'm like, oh fucking sharks, I'm like, oh, you know, fuck you. That's what I'm thinking in my head. Like it's a real battle of sort of who's the most pissed off. So if they can win that battle in the water, they can really get fucking nasty. And then when they get to that real crazy point where, you know, might have to shoot a shark or whatever, but that's pretty damn rare. Most often you can just like, stab the crap out of them. Quite often they don't even care about that. I think I'm digressing a wee bit, but because I remember these 1% of situations, and then because they're so burnt in my mind, I talk about them, and then everyone assumes that's a normal situation. It's definitely not. So please bear that in mind, because a lot of people, they talk, oh, Luke says this, Luke says that, but I'm only speaking about situations that most people don't even get the chance to encounter. So grain of salt with all that hardcore shark stuff. But you got a guard, so it's one shooter and one guard, or vice versa. And always play it by ear, because things always change in the water too. This is just how you approach the dive, because quite often me and my mate, when we read each other, like yesterday I shot one and then he shot one, and then we were just like bugger it because it was quite slow all day. We did see a few sharks, but it just wasn't that kind of day, and that's kind of hard to explain, and that's something you need to learn about too. But I'm fully digressing, but hopefully you guys get some information out of this. However, the reality is, okay, if you're fighting a fish and there's sharks there, and let's say you happen to be away from the crew or whatever, shore diving, and you're floating on a float line and sharks come in and they're eating that kingy, know where your knife is. You want to always just know where your knife is, and then if they're coming up and things are getting out of control, or they're coming up to get in your face after they've eaten it, get that knife out and then just fucking, yeah, know where it is. And if they come right in, just stab them with it, and make sure that you hold your handle tight. You can't slip off your handle. They hate being touched around that nose area, and they sort of hate it, but they're a lot more intimidating than they are in the reality of their nature. So just bear that in mind. They will, you know, a lot of it, like 95% of it, is just real intimidation. Not really so much the bitey aspect, but you know, I'm not saying that they don't bite people, or they wouldn't, because they have. I think they're listed about number 10 on the shark attack scale in the world, which isn't actually that low. But yeah, just know where that knife is, and then that knife is, you know, I keep mine on my right belt because I can get it out easily and quickly. That is your weapon that you have, because you're not weaponless when you don't have your spear gun on you or something to poke them with. And yeah, that's basically it. And then you can have the confidence to sort of have that there, and yeah, basically if it comes to it, you can stab them. So yeah, I sort of hope that's answered that question. I don't know if there's anything else really that I should add to it, but it's just basically the name of the game. The majority of guys are shooting kingies with float lines and just fighting on their float line and having fish taken off them. So, but yeah, I understand what you mean by it is quite nice. But sometimes also with the reel, you don't have the luxury of poking them with a reel when you've got a kingy on there, not at all. Sometimes you want to get that gun away from you, especially if line is wrapping up and sort of tangling in the water, if you've come up from a dive and you're trying to make line. So yeah, that's it is a scenario with both, but ideally 2 divers, and both are confident with sharks, and both confident enough to know to also, you're gonna have to just keep doing it to learn about it. I'm just gonna assume I'm speaking to people who are only just starting, because then I can talk more. Yeah, you're just going to have to go through the situations to really learn what type of behaviour to expect at the time, because it's so hard for me to explain. Sometimes you could chum the shit out of a spot. You could have 4 sharks in there, and you can get away with shooting fish. Sometimes you could have a couple of sharks on the outskirts and no shot fish, and then you shoot a kingy and they're all in and they're going nuts and they're coming at you, and like straight away it's just crazy. So it's just day by day. One thing I will say is that it does depend on current. If there's a lot of current, I think things get a bit more out of control. And also obviously how hungry the sharks are. We don't know how much they've got in their bellies, or what their feeding cycles are like. So yeah, I hope that's given you guys a good insight into this. I thought I'd do a long one because I missed last week's one, so this is a double up episode. And then I wanted to do another topic, but I can't remember what it was at this point in time. I've just had this thing converted over to a roller gun. This is my 1.2, so I could have a chat about that at some point, but I haven't even tested it yet. But that's going to be a real beefy 1.2 cuttlefish roller. So yeah, anyway, I'll be waiting for more questions from you guys, because it'll be sick. And yeah, let me know if you have any questions about the Polespear. Cheers.